Dale Lawrence and Dave Rattigan here, all by ourselves today, Dale, for Inside the Line, Real Stories by Real Cops. You can reach out to us at realstoriesbyrealcops@gmail.com. Check us out on the website insidetheline.org and share us, please, because we want to be shared. We want everyone to experience the love that is this show. And welcome to this week's episode, Evil That Men Do.
It's a very serious one, so we've given Nathan the day off.
Yeah, we want to get rid of that guy because we don't want him making his little silly comments. Anyway, it has been a crazy few weeks in the good old USA. Not really. Some of the crimes that we've had shocked the conscience of the average person, from California to Florida, points in between.
What we're looking at this week are what's referred to as motiveless crimes, meaning it's a crime that happens, a murder, and you look at it and say, why was that person murdered? There's like no motive. It's just a random, senseless thrill killing for no apparent reason other than you have to ask the killer why they did it. Because when you look at most crimes, you look at a motive. Is it revenge? Is it a passion? Someone's cheating on another guy's boyfriend or girlfriend?
Yep.
Was it a robbery and so forth?
Yeah.
Those are crimes that have motive, and you can sometimes put reason to why it happened. You're not legitimizing it,
right,
but you can look in someone's mind and say, oh, well, that's why they did it.
Right.
The three crimes we're going to look at, there's no reason at all. It's just a thrill kill.
Well, it's a mental illness kill.
Well, yeah, a lot of these, I think we're looking at three crimes that, motivating factor of the three individuals involved is probably some degree of mental illness. And it looks like a very high degree of mental illness.
Right. But of course, that's the thing too. You say somebody does something horrible and you can't explain it. And you can say, well, they were mentally ill and therefore it made sense to them and it didn't make sense to anybody else. But it's also a thing where, are we diagnosing it before or are we diagnosing it afterwards? At least in one of these cases, or actually maybe all of them, we're diagnosing mental illness after the fact.
I think if you look at some of the histories of the three individuals that are involved, there is some speculation, if you believe news reports, because we're going on news reports, because we don't know these people personally. There's been hey, that guy has mental illness. Right. But what do you do with him? You can't lock him up because he has a mental illness.
Anyway, here's something I thought this was really interesting, because I thought that during the pandemic, crimes went down. According to FBI crime reports, murders reached an all-time high in 2020.
Yeah, 21,500 according to the FBI crime report.
Which was 16.
Which was in 2019, there was around 16,000.
So this is 29%, which is basically, it's a third more.
Yeah, 5,000 more murders.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yes.
That's like 1990s when murders based on like the crack and the drug epidemic back then. Not that we're not in an epidemic of drugs now, because we are.
But we're used to it.
But it's different.
We're used to it now.
It's a heroin now. It's kind of lethargic drug.
Okay.
Yeah, the other one was more of a crack epidemic, cocaine.
So
people were out of their mind.
Right. Which seems to be, again, people were out of their minds then, and now they're mentally ill or whatever. But I'm stunned that the number is so high, considering, am I correct to say that overall crimes were down?
I never trusted crime stats, because as a former crime analyst, you can always look at the stats in different ways and you can report them different ways and show percentages and confuse people. But you look at murders, you can't confuse a murder. It's either a murder or it isn't a murder.
Is this a murder or a killing, by the way? Is there a difference in crime stats? Is there a difference between murder and killing? Like somebody who...
No, killings. It's just...
killings.
Yeah, there's different categories. Is it a domestic? Did it happen during a bank robbery? Was it a serial killing?
Right.
Was it a spree killing? But they're all just wrapped into one.
Yeah.
21,500 people were murdered in 1 year.
That's stunning. The increase from 2019.
It's insane. It's insane. But you know something? And you have the academic viewpoint on that. Academics always try to explain it with some of the social factors. When there's social unrest in a country, people kind of get all wound up. They get depressed. Yes, go ahead,
It was
Dave.
all Fox News listeners. All Fox News listeners going out and trying to kill Black Lives Matter protesters. Or it was all Black Lives Matter protesters who meant to loot and wound up murdering people.
Yeah, so social scientists look at it that way. But cops, we don't look at it that way. We look at it pretty much black and white, whatever's in front of us. And the first thing most cops will just tell you, that the people who kill someone are just evil. I don't care about mental illness. I don't care about if they were brought up in a single family home in the ghetto. I don't care about anything like that. You killed someone because you're evil. It's that simple.
Okay.
Very easily explained. Take all the bullshit out.
Really? What if they owe you money?
What's that?
What if they owe you money?
Oh, if they owe you a couple of $100, then yeah.
All right. So people are just evil. There are a couple of other things.
Yeah, there's definitely a couple of other things, because a lot of times if people feel that there's unrest in a community, or they feel that law enforcement isn't going to do anything, in which law enforcement's hand has been handcuffed for the past few years. They don't want to do anything because they're being defunded. They're not being respected. They're looked at as the bad guy even when they do something right.
So you're saying they're pouting because they're being criticized? Is that what you're saying?
Well, yeah, and that pouting, people know that, and they feel, look at what's happening with all the looting across the country.
Yeah, I know. It's awful.
Once you know that no one is watching you,
yep,
even normal people will commit crimes. You know, even the average normal, a college professor.
Yeah.
If you know no one's in the store, are you going to leave $20 for a case of beer? You're just going to walk out and not pay for it.
I would pay for it. I would pay for it, but that's because of all those high schools that I've been in where they have that character is what you're doing when nobody's looking sign in the lobby, and I've seen too many of those. Not everyone's like...
a lot of people, there's been a lot of studies done on that, and I will look at these studies and I'll give them some validity, that once you take away those social barriers to committing crime, meaning it's not bad anymore, it's acceptable, or the cops aren't going to arrest you,
or you're not connected to the community,
or you're not connected to the community, then more crime is going to happen. Like I said, normal people will commit crime, or so-called normal people.
You want to know a similar one? And I can't cite it exactly, but I've seen this. They've brought people in to a room, and they've told them they're going to do some sort of a study.
I know the study you're talking about.
There's the one about the ghost.
Oh, not the ghost.
Yeah,
no,
this is the ghost one. They say,
they
say that the room. Oh, they say the room is haunted. I'm sure it's not haunted, but they say the ghost sits right there, and then they have them do something, and then they come back and they record this. They do a game and they record their score in the game. The single person by himself or herself or themselves, and they say that people will record their score and they'll report their score more accurately if they tell them that there's a ghost in the room.
Oh, okay.
Then if
someone's watching them.
Angels watching them, or God watching over them, or in this case, ghosts
they have a conscience.
They to give them a little
most
conscience.
Most people have a conscience, yep.
Yeah, it's a strange thing.
The crimes we're talking about today?
Yep, conscience.
Oh, none whatsoever.
Yeah, this is horrible. And you think that this might come down to the idea that people are going to arm themselves?
Well, yeah. What else? Well, first of all, we'll go back one step. Obviously, the legal system isn't taking care of the criminals either. They're letting them out. Yeah. So if I'm a criminal and I'm going to go do whatever I want, and I know I'm going to get out or be put on bail, so there's no deterrent for them. But that being said, your other point was, if people don't feel that the government, their local law enforcement, is protecting them, what else is going to happen? They're going to arm themselves. And now you're seeing that across the country. I mean, the Rittenhouse case, however you want to look at that, that is a prime example of a citizen arming himself and taking the law into their own hands.
Right.
Whether you agree with it or not, that's what is coming. So if you don't gain control of it now, it's going to keep on getting worse.
I'll give you another example of this. My daughter, you've met her, 16, smart.
Absolutely.
Yeah. She is at home right now working on a back computer and sewing uniforms for us.
Yeah.
And I'm going to become a vigilante.
Batman and Robin.
Well, she wants to be Batgirl, but actually she wants to be Batman. I think that might create friction that might hurt us getting this off the ground. Anyway, so let's take a look at these three random and murderous events. We're looking at three. Michigan high school shooting, which is horrible, left 4 students dead last week. Palm Beach Gardens, Florida, 14-year-old boy was murdered. And Columbia University student killed in New York City, right near the campus in Upper Manhattan. 3 horrible crimes. Let's start with the first one. Oxford High School in Michigan, a lone gunman on Tuesday, November 30th, right at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, or a little before 1 in the afternoon, killed 4 students, a 14-year-old, a 16-year-old, and 2 17-year-olds. Several others hurt, and One of the kids, Tate Meyer, is
All-American kid.
He tried to stop
He's
the
being
shooter.
hailed a hero. He's the type of kid that in any type of violent situation, like an active shooter, which they had at this high school, you get three options. Option A is to run. Option B is to hide.
Yep.
And option C is to fight. So this individual, whatever situation he was in, maybe he was cornered, maybe he could have escaped, but he decided not to.
Yeah.
Whatever it was, he decided to go after the kid. And unfortunately, it didn't work out for him. But you know something? He's the type of kid who was brought up in a house to be a leader, to be the type of kid that stands up to the bully, to be the type of kid that will help a person in need. So that's, according to the kids and according to a lot of the literature on this case, that's exactly what he did. That's exactly the type of kid he was. And unfortunately, it didn't work out for him in that situation. But that's the type of kid you want on the news at night. You want to interview those type of kids, not these hoodlums that are out there vandalizing and protesting and beating up people. You want that kid. He's an all-American from the Midwest. And then the thing about this is that the big issue here, and it's just been breaking the last couple of days, and information just broke a few minutes ago, is that the school officials, the counselors,
everybody in the world could have stopped this. The parents have already been
The parents could have stopped it.
James and Jennifer Crumbly, they bought the semi-automatic handgun that he used to carry out the killings.
Yep.
They didn't secure it at the house. They were very cavalier in their attitude, which, of course, everyone puts everything on social media. So they were very cavalier about it, and prosecutors filed involuntary manslaughter charges against the parents. As you know, there was
as of today, Monday, that the school officials may be held liable also.
This because one of the teachers very alertly saw a drawing,
like a drawing or a note. It had the words, "The thoughts won't stop. Help me."
And that teacher alerted other school authorities, and they alerted the parents,
and they had a meeting.
And they passed the buck back and forth, and the parents said,
"We're not taking the kid home."
Yeah.
And the school said, "All right, kid, go to class." And then shortly thereafter.
And the kid, one more thing, Ethan says, it's what did he say? It was a video game?
He's going to be a video game designer.
Yeah, he's a video game designer. It's nothing. It's just, you've got it all wrong. Okay, go ahead.
100% completely incompetent parents, school officials.
Yeah, and they never went to the cops.
Never went to the cops. My whole thing, if you've listened to a lot of the podcasts, we've gone over Identify, React, Prevent, which is an active shooter training, and we've also gone over school resource officers in the schools. And this is a prime example of why school officials are not competent to deal with a kid like him, because a police officer would look at that very black and white. The kid made the statement, obviously, help me, the thoughts won't stop. Obviously, this kid has some psychological issues. He's asking for help. He might have thought he was going to get the help. The people in the position to help him all dismissed it or diminished it. And he just said, fuck it. They don't care. I don't care. And he went out and started shooting people. Now, if he had called the cops, a good cop would have been able to look at that situation, because myself, as a former cop, have gone on many suicidal calls, many calls in the schools where where kids have written statements similar to that. And that kid at that very moment is taken out of the school and he's transported either by his parents or an ambulance with a police escort to a hospital for a psychological evaluation.
Right.
Not 48 hours later, not 10 minutes later, right away, because that is so basic for any police officer to deal with. It's just a basic cry for help, and they drop the ball and they're incompetent. And if they do charge the school officials, maybe going forward, other school officials will get off their ass and not try to just pass the buck.
Right.
Because this was a 100% preventable situation at that point in time. But you don't know if the kid a week later would have done the same thing, but at that point in time, 100% preventable.
In your experience, how many of these kids that you've had suicide calls, or you haven't had any homicide calls, right? You haven't had anything like this?
No, not in the schools, no. But we've had suicidal calls, whether it's text messages or phone calls or telling a friend or telling an ex-boyfriend, 3 or 4 times a